Hello everyone, welcome to this screencast outlining the guidelines when writing your written summary for your care skills assignment. Okay, so as I mentioned in class, everyone will have to give me a unique written summary, draw your own conclusions and make some valuable recommendations. So there's a number of marks, I believe on your marking scheme, about 4 marks going for this part of the assignment, which is the majority in relation to the other marks, which are generally two marks allocated under each domain. So it's really important that you pay attention and you give me up a valuable summary. So again, just to outline, this really shouldn't be any more than a page and a half typed to 2 pages maximum. I've just written out some guidelines that I'm going to go through now, and this is more just to serve really as a template towards your own work. So for this part of your work, you should treat it like a very small assignment, and you should include a cover, title page and an introduction. You should also include a middle, so that's the meaty part, and a conclusion. If we just move down further, when you're introducing the summary of a meeting, it's always a good idea to start with the very basics. So really what I'm saying there is assume that the reader has no clue in what you've done. Okay, so forget that it'll be me correcting it, because there'll also be an extern looking at this, and the extern looking at it may have no background in healthcare. So you must assume the reader has no clue of what you took part in. That means that when you take a step back from your work, where you give it to somebody in your family, they must be able to pick up what you're trying to say. So I've also said work your way into the next paragraph from there. Okay, so you're going to start any assignment with an introduction to what took place. So I've just given an example here. For example, it may be useful to start with something like, as part of my care skills module, I was asked to participate in a group meeting with my fellow peers in relation to a 75-year-old lady who was recently admitted to a nursing home. Okay, so you can see there, very basic introduction, but straight to the point. Next, it is a good idea to remind the reader that you were specifically asked to cover in the meeting, or to what you were specifically asked to cover in the meeting, apologies, such as your introduction to the client, including her background and medical history, her hygiene and healthcare needs, including her physical, emotional and psychological, her social and spiritual. So again, don't forget to address the psychological, social and spiritual as much as the other, because if you look at your marking scheme, there's the exact same marks going for both. So in addition, we were also asked to consider the care equipment and aids needed for Mrs. Jones. Please refer to your marking scheme for that and you'll see that there, as well as safety and security measures that should be taken when planning her care. Again, mentioning this alone, it's like the use of buzzwords. It can get you points, but it might be no harm to further evolve when you're discussing the needs here and talk about, for example, under safety, you could mention that Mrs. Jones was orientated and you ensured the call bell was in situ while she was in bed for safety reasons. Likewise, with the care equipment, specifically outline what care equipment she needs. So again, you're going to progress and establish that throughout the meeting, myself and my colleagues considered Mrs. Jones' quality of life and the key aspects that we need to address as her newfound primary carers. We completed a care plan for Mrs. Jones subsequent to the meeting, which included a detailed account of her needs problems, our goals in addressing these needs, and the interventions required to ensure all of her required needs are met. We commenced Mrs. Jones on a BSL chart, that's a blood sugar level chart, urine intake and output, as well as meal chart for 72 hours as per setting policy. The meal chart can be discontinued after this time if the dietitian is happy to do so. I will now provide a summary of the needs discussed during the meeting and outline any recommendations made for her future care. And I've just put here 1 mobility, and that is where you put in your problem, goal and intervention. Again, very brief. It doesn't have to be word for word from the care plan, and then you progress through. So guys, that paragraph I've just read out is a good example of your intro after the main introduction, okay? But it's an example and a sample, so I would expect that you would tailor that in your own way. Again, after you've gone through all the needs and I suppose the main points of the meeting, it's always good to mention in your conclusion the task at hand again. So re-emphasize the task at hand and what you were asked to do. For example, to conclude, myself and my teammates were asked to consider this 75-year-old lady who recently was admitted to our nursing home. And it's a nice way again to re-emphasize what you were asked to do. Outline the importance of conducting such a meeting. So again, you're going to say, it is essential that the members of a multidisciplinary team get together for a meeting. This ensures safe, effective care. Again, please, incorporate this in your own way. And it's also no harm to outline your personal learning journey. So again, there's no harm in saying, before this assignment, I had no experience with a care plan or a multidisciplinary team meeting, and now I feel X, Y, and Z. So again, that's always great. It demonstrates your learning and it shows reflection to the reader. Again, when you're outlining the recommendations for future, you can include recommendations for Mrs. Jones. And again, you've probably mentioned these in your points you'll discuss, such as, say, mobility, problem, goal, intervention, and recommendations. Well, the intervention and recommendations are going to be very similar there. But if you have anything else for Mrs. Jones, like, that you think would be a recommendation, personally, stick that in there. Also, you can include your own aspirations in relation to your own personal development. For example, I would like to participate in a real multidisciplinary meeting in the care setting and become a valued member of the healthcare team. One point I will make is that this part is often the hardest and trickiest, and for that reason people tend to neglect it and maybe give me one recommendation or one point. A recommendation doesn't have to be in bullet form with a big sign saying recommendation. You can incorporate that throughout the piece of work, but just make sure that you are considering it, because you will lose marks if you don't factor this in. Okay, and again, often people would say, is this a right recommendation or a wrong one? Generally, a recommendation is fine, personally, professionally. Once it's, I suppose, not way outside of the domain of care, or it's not breaking any major rules, a recommendation is absolutely fine. So there's no need to worry if it's right or wrong. It's more often than not, they're right. Again, so guys, I hope this has helped you. I would like for this to come in to me as soon as possible. I know I've set the deadline for the week after the midterm, but ideally I would like this to come in after the midterm, because the knowledge will be fresh. It's not a massive assignment, and I think the sooner you do it, the better it will be for yourself. Thank you.